nobody wants a surprise in their jelly donut. That's because the middle is the most important part. At Graybar, we're at the middle of electrical and datacom jobs across the country, connecting installers, facility managers, and business owners with smart solutions for their most challenging projects, which means stocking and delivering crucial products on time and on budget, with no surprises, thanks to our nationwide logistics network. Yep, Graybar does that.
Who's this?
Good morning, St. Louis, and welcome in to Cards Hub 365 here on Sports Hub STL. I'm Matthew Rocchio, joined today by Ethan Hannaford, and we've got some breaking news to break down as the Cardinals are telling us everything that's going on down in Jupiter. The roster decisions are coming fast. A lot of changes, a lot of things that we were waiting to happen, Ethan, have finally happened here in the morning. Katie Wu and some other incredible journalists down in Jupiter updating us with everything going on with the Cardinals. Before we dive into it, though, how are you doing today, sir?
Can't be complaining. I mean, it's the same thing I think I've said at the start of every single one, where we've made it, where opening day is right around the corner, and regardless of, the noise around the roster, there's something about there's something about those Clydesdales, like being near and the Red Jackets and those trophies being on the field. The start of baseball just signifies something in St. Louis, and I think that to add on to that, we're going to get into it, but some of the decisions made today, I think the fans, I feel like the fans would probably tell you, it feels like the Cardinals never make the decision that we want them to make. It feels like today they did, at least to a certain extent. So hopefully, fans are happy about this, and like I said, at least to a certain extent. So I'm excited to break it down and talk about it and hear the people's thoughts on this, Rocchio.
Yes, and if you're watching us right now on Sports Hub STL, hit that like and subscribe. Hit that little bell icon so you always know when we're going live here on Sports Hub STL, including the Cards Hub 365. It's called Cards Hub 365 because we do it every day, talking cards baseball at some point in your day. And here we are right here at 11 o'clock breaking down some big news for the Cardinals right here on Cards Hub 365, presented by Graybar, or powered by Graybar, because that's what they do. They're your distributor for electrical and datacom needs. Find them online at graybar.com. Always doing wonderful things here for us on Cards 365. You said jump into the chat. We're going to hear from the fans, so let's get into the chat early and often. Jeff P., he's saying what's up, and then he's saying worst roster construction ever, but he is happy for VS2. Ethan wants to dive into that. We have so much to dive into, but Brooke Grimsley, obviously, who hosts the morning show here with Randy Carricker every weekday morning at 10 a.m., she did a great job of kind of running down what all happened right at about 10:35 or so on X, thanks to Katie Wu, Daniel Guerrero, and the other incredible reporters down in Jupiter. Here's all the moves we pretty much got hit with today. Victor Scott will be the opening day center fielder. Matthew Liberatore will start the season as a fifth starter. Steven Matz will start the season in bullpen and join the rotation on April 16th, because after a few off days, they will switch to a six-man rotation at that April 16th date. Michael McGreevy starts the season in Memphis. Michael Siani makes the cut, and Jose Fermin and Jose Barrero will start the season at AAA Memphis. So we'll just kind of run down all this news and what it means. Obviously, some reaction here. Topher Rocks, go VS2. Christopher Bloom, the Creepsville citizen, says Siani and VS2 is weird, but I'm happy for Scott. So, Ethan, I'll let you run this. Do we go in order? Do we start off with Victor Scott II? Do you want us to talk about pitching? What are we starting off with here?
Well, let's start with what everyone is and their moms is talking about, and that is that Victor Scott made this roster. And I back Jeff and Topher Rocks that congratulations to Victor Scott II. This was a situation, and me and Brendan Schaefer and I talked about this yesterday, that going into the spring, what were the odds that Victor Scott was going to be on this roster? I would say that it was extremely low, maybe 10%. He forced the Cardinals' hand. He forced John Mozeliak, Oliver Marmol's hands because of how well he played this spring. This is not the same spring that he had in 2023. He's much more polished. He's hitting the ball much harder. I could care less about the power. He's hitting the ball extremely hard, whether it's in the ballpark or not. And he's also, he's had the time to make those adjustments. We know he kind of got thrown into the fire because of some injuries last year. This is a guy that is in a different spot than he was in spring of 2023, and he has earned every single right to be the Cardinals opening day center fielder. Now, the thing that the Cardinals are going to have to figure out is what the heck are they going to do around him, because it puts them in some lineup difficulties. What are they going to do with Nolan Gorman? Is Alec Burleson going to play every day? Are they going to somehow figure out a 10-man lineup to where the majority of these guys are playing an even amount, but maybe they're getting a little bit more rest time than they normally would if they were an everyday starter would? So, Victor Scott, you look at the numbers from this spring. Like I said, this guy 100% deserved it. He was by far the best hitter for the Cardinals this spring. I guess you could throw Wilson Contreras up there as well. But, it's surprising in the sense that you wondered if the Cardinals were actually going to pull through with it. If we would have been asking this question 2 weeks ago even, I still probably would have said, and we've talked about this a lot, Matthew, the Cardinals, I still thought were going to have him in the minors to start the year off, just because you thought, how are they going to not give Alec Burleson, Nolan Gorman, Brendan Donovan, Lars Nootbaar all, the playing time that they arguably deserve? And he quite literally forced their hand. There was no way that you could leave him off this roster for how he's been playing. Topher Rocks mentioning that he guesses it cuts into Gorman and Burley's at-bats. I don't think it's going to cut into and Brendan Donovan, so I think that this is the only option right now for who it cuts into. I think that more so what it does is it cuts into early season at-bats. This is I think people look at the opening day roster and they say this is what it's going to be for 162. It's not the case. Injuries happen, slumps happen. There's a whole bunch of different things that are going to happen. So perhaps at the beginning, yes, it will cut into those at-bats. But let's say Victor Scott II really struggles for the first month of the year. Maybe they send him back down to AAA, and then those guys are getting more consistent at-bats, or they're starting 6 games a week. Let's say that Nolan Gorman goes into some severe struggles. Maybe they send him down. Let's say there's an injury somewhere. There's a whole different range of things that could happen to where this doesn't mean that Nolan Gorman and Alec Burleson are having their at-bats cut back the entire season. It just means that likely as Oliver Marmol tries to play piggyback and figure out what exactly this lineup's going to look like here for the first few weeks, it's going to be a little bit more challenging to put it together than perhaps it will be at different parts of the season.
Yeah, we're getting some more comments here about the at-bats and where they're going to go. Mavs Flanker 7 says, so we now know the outfielders, and I don't hate it. Burley is really the loser. Surprised it was Libby and not McGreevy. And I'm with you. I'm with Mavs Flanker, and I'm bummed about it because, and I'm gonna loop in some fan reaction that you picked up on your personal Twitter, which was the poll you did about who fans wanted to see in Memphis. And I think we just need to address the disconnect that's obviously there because Nolan Gorman won that poll. And
let's mention the poll first. Let's mention what the poll was first. Yeah,
it was who fans wanted to see in Memphis and off the major league roster, correct?
Or just not in the opening day lineup.
Not in the opening day roster. And the options were Nolan Gorman,
Victor Scott, Lars Nootbaar, and who was the last one? Victor Scott, Lars Nootbaar, and Alec Burleson.
And Nolan Gorman won that poll very heartily.
It wasn't
even close. And so I bring up Mavs Flanker because, and we have some other comments here about Jeff P says, in my opinion, Gorman has the shortest leash. If he comes out the gate bad, Burley will DH. And here's my thing is that those first 3 words are very important there because unfortunately I might agree with you that opinion. Ethan might agree with that opinion, but I think it's very common knowledge, it seems right now, that the Cardinals would very much not agree with that opinion, Jeff P. And that means that I don't think Gorman has a short leash. And I think that if anyone loses out of bats, it's going to be Alec Burleson. This team, I just feel like is going to prioritize, like you're saying though, early season at bats for Nolan Gorman. Does this mean that Alec Burleson is not going to get, upwards of 400 at bats this year? No, it doesn't. But I think out of the gate, this probably does cut into Burleson's at bats more so than anybody else's, especially if you're talking about who does this hurt more, Burleson or Gorman's at bats. The Cardinals want and probably view it as they need to see what Nolan Gorman is. And I have a feeling he'll have a fairly long leash compared to what fan expectation should be for that leash.
Yeah, but I think here's the thing with fan expectation, and this is something the Cardinals Nation is just going to have to adjust to in 2025. The main goal, the main purpose behind this season is not what it has been for the last 25 years. It is not to win a World Series. At least that's not what the message was throughout the large majority of the offseason, and it hasn't really been changed. I know Mo kind of changed from like this is a reset to a transition, and he kind of walked back on the reset word, and likely to do with them not being able to trade Nolan Arenado. But Cardinals fans have this mindset of, well, if Gorman's going to struggle, then we have to move on because the main goal is to win as many games as possible. Yes, you're still trying to win games, but I talked about this yesterday again with Schaefer. This has to be a year of figuring out what Nolan Gorman is. Now, if Nolan Gorman is batting 190, 195 like he was for the large majority of last year, I don't think that they're still going to play him every day. But do I think that Nolan Gorman is a better player than a guy that bats 195 and strikes out 37% of the time? I do. I think he's a much better player than that. I don't expect him to do that again this year. I hope he doesn't do that again this year because that puts the Cardinals in a tough position because then maybe they are balancing out. Well, maybe we're moving on from him a little bit earlier than we imagined. I want the Cardinals to be able to figure out in 2025 what they have in Nolan Gorman, and you can't do that if he's struggling for a few weeks and then you bench him. Like, you're not going to be able to figure out. You're just going to continue to go into this delay of figuring out what Nolan Gorman is. Like, this is, in my opinion, this is a make it or break a year for Nolan Gorman. Like, If it is atrocious again, I think that you're kind of moving on to the next thing and saying, okay, Brendan Donovan's your second baseman until JJ Weatherholt's here and he proves that he's ready to go. So it's tough for how you're going to maneuver this situation. I think that Alec Burleson is going to see his at-bats affected. I think Nolan Gorman will too, though, specifically for the first few weeks. I don't think it's going to be a season-long thing, but I think that it would not surprise me if those two are playing relatively evenly to start off the season just to make sure that they're both getting consistent at-bats to the best amount possible. I imagine they are both lefties, so I can't it's not like it's going to affect one or more than the other, where like Nolan Gorman's not going to start against lefties because Burleson's a righty. That's not going to be the case, which I think is a good thing. I think they both need to be seeing lefty pitching because you can't just continue to throw these guys out there against righties and then expect them to just improve upon lefties without facing them. But yeah, it's a tough situation for how exactly you go about it. But the reality is regardless of like what the mindset is for your squad, Victor Scott has proven that he is good to go and he's ready at least to start out the season here. And he has earned that opportunity. And the rest you're kind of just going to have to figure out around it. It's the same thing. I mean, it's the same thing if Nolan Gorman was absolutely mashing the ball and you had to figure out an issue, with forcing Brendan Donovan to play in the outfield, and then maybe perhaps that making that a little bit more difficult. So there's a whole bunch of different directions like you could go with that, but it's going to be interesting to see what the Birds do.
Got a couple of texts here that I was throwing up that I wanted to hit. Keith Adams, okay, Gorman hasn't/can't hit, and Scott playing doesn't cut into Burleson's at bat. Isn't he the DH? And again, I know people are so down on Nolan Gorman last year, but if you look at this from the wide scope, last year was his third year in the majors.
His second full year.
Yeah, it's the second full year. But I mean, yeah, exactly. So his first year he had just under 300 at bats. Second year he had just over 400. Last year he had 365. And so in that first year, average hitter 104 OPS plus. Solid 14 home runs and 300 at bats. Solid. That second year we know it. 116 OPS plus, a plus 800 OPS. A 478 slug and 27 home runs in just over 400 at bats. And then last year, it's the complete reverse. The strikeout rate jumps 6%. His OPS goes from 16% over average to 15% below average. But that dichotomy is why they need this year to see what he is. Because if he can be what he was 2 years ago in his first full MLB season, 30 home runs on a full amount of at-bats, an 800 OPS, 15 to 20% better than average as a hitter. That's what this team needs. They aren't going to be able to, and I think Derek Gould just posted a great story. He did an interview with John Mozeliak, and the premise of the interview was, are you worried about how St. Louis and other markets like St. Louis are going to be able to compete in baseball going forward? John Mozeliak's short answer, because I'm not going to get into the whole piece, go to stltoday.com and read it, was I do. So they are going to need to develop big-name hitters to be the meat of their order for the next 5-7 years. It's either or Nolan Gorman and Jordan Walker. And so they have to figure out who he is. And jumping into the next question here from I had it. Where was it?
While you're looking
Joseph.
for
Here it is. Sorry,
okay.
Ryan Knowles. Why isn't Burley an everyday player when he was one of our better hitters last year? Again, look at the numbers. Last year, Burley was a great player. I liked watching Burley, but in over 500 at bats, he hit 21 home runs. He slugged 420, 50 points below where Gorman did 2 years ago. His OPS was 730, 70 points below what Gorman was 2 years ago. And his OPS plus was 104, just barely above an average hitter in Major League Baseball. That slight difference and the fact that he's 2 years older than Gorman is why they need to see more so what Gorman has than what Alec Burleson has. And you can't blame a team, as Ethan just said, who has this. This is where they are right now in building a roster. These are the decisions you have to make. That one, it doesn't surprise me, and I'm surprised fans are still harping on it.
Yeah, and just to, why is Burley not playing in the outfield? Where is he going to play? I mean, if they want Jordan Walker to be the everyday right fielder. And let me say, for a second, my heart stopped this morning because before I saw the tweet that you told me to go look at, I saw the lineup and Victor Scott's playing right field today, and I was like, oh my God, what did they do?
Man,
what happened to Walker?
Oh, that would have been incredible.
I freaked out for a second. I'm not gonna lie, but then where's he supposed to play in the outfield? Because if Scott's gonna be in center and Walker's in right, then Nootbaar has to be in left, which means that if Nootbaar's in left, Donovan can't be in left. He's gonna have to play second. So yes, Gorman could DH, but then where does Alec Burleson play? Because Wilson Contreras is going to be at first this year. So that's the puzzle as to I forget who it was. I think it was Keith that was asking about how that whole situation works. But then I mean it's a tough situation because it is important to figure out what Nolan Gorman is. Alec Burleson most definitely, I think, earned the opportunity to be playing last year. And that's the frustrating part about it to everyone out there, is that it's this tough balance between who has earned the opportunity and who do you need to figure out, who needs to figure out their development. And right now, the most important two guys from a power standpoint on this team that need to figure things out are Jordan Walker and Nolan Gorman. And those guys have to play close to every day. And the rest you hope to be able to fit in around them. Because if you can, let's just imagine a world where a prospect does pan out for the St. Louis Cardinals. What a world it would be if Jordan Walker and Nolan Gorman end up being, middle of the lineup power guys that you can rely on to eventually, once Nolan Arenado is no longer on this club, once Wilson Contreras perhaps is beyond a contract, that those are your 3-4 hitters. That's the world that I want to live in. But you have to be able to figure out what they are first. And the last thing I'll say before I'll let you comment, Matthew, is that people, there's a lot of frustration with Nolan Gorman struggles, Jordan Walker struggles. This team has gone through now, these young guys have gone through some of them 3 hitting coaches in 4 seasons. All of them with different approaches for how to hit. Yes, the players in large part are responsible for their approach, but the hitting coach does play a pretty big role in that simultaneously. So that changing constantly is an issue, and I think is a fair reason, at least a portion of the reason for why some of these guys have struggled. So let's hope that Brant Brown, the guy they brought in this year that was in Seattle last year, let's hope that he's the right guy for the job. It seems like the comments have been really positive from the manager this year. Obviously, Oli's always going to be positive, but I've heard like Newtbar had some positive comments on a podcast, on Katie Wu's podcast a couple of weeks ago. Like, let's hope that like he is able to kind of get these young guys stirring in the right direction, because there's a lot of potential. There's a lot of potential for these guys. And if Nolan Gorman sucks, guys, Topher Rocks just put a comment in, or put a comment a couple of minutes ago here, that Gorman has, I'm sorry, it wasn't a couple minutes ago, it was 10 minutes ago. Gorman has the most potential and the most risk. Like, yeah, correct. But like, what's the risk? If he's bad this year and the Cardinals don't make the playoffs, okay. Like, it's not like this team is like, was ever in the mindset of like, this team is going to be like fighting for a World Series. That was never the point of this season. So, we'll just have to wait and see what happens. Dave, let's see what's Dave got here.
He's got these two morons blaming the coaches for Gorman and Walker struggling. I didn't know the coaches were up there hitting. Clean the wax out of your ears. Listen, listen, I'm not saying it to be mean. It's a beautiful process. It feels great. You can hear for miles afterwards. You would be surprised by the gunk he got in there, because we're always pushing headphones in there and stuff like that. Just clean out the ears, Dave. It'll be a great day for you. Really brighten up your Sunday. We're not saying it was the problem. We're saying that when you are a developing player, things constantly changing. You ever watch football? Things constantly changing. Getting different offensive coordinators every year can mess with your process, especially when we know how important coaching can be, because we have the impact. And this is why I thought it was an interesting comment from Steve Wright. I don't necessarily agree, but you hired all these player development guys for the minors, send them to Gorman down and let him figure it out down there. I get that, but there is a point where we're not facing major league pitching. It's hard to learn how to face major league pitching. But to Dave's point, we know the impact coaching can have, because we saw what happened when the guys went down last year and started working with a guy like Ryan Ludwig, who completely turns over some of these players.
Victor Scott.
Victor Scott, and completely changes. So, of course, coaching matters. We're not saying that's why these guys struggled. Gorman struggled last year because he couldn't hit anything. Especially, I know people like to bitch about breaking balls with him. Couldn't hit fastballs last year. Absolutely, just could not hit fastballs for the life of him. So I think the things with Gorman's are a lot more, or is either a lot more simple or a lot more complicated, and that's why the Cardinals are going to give him a long runway. I know that people hate that word. The other thing I was going to say to your point about Gorman and Walker, it's not just about getting guys there. It's about getting guys that next year you can lock in to an 8-year contract at $12 million a year. It's having a guy in house that you can lock in on that long-term contract that isn't 25 to 30 to 35 million a year, and then having a middle of the order guy who isn't costing you an arm and the leg.
Yeah, look what the Braves did with Ronald Acuna Jr.
Great point.
He's on a freaking 6-year, $100 million deal, it's either 6 or 8 years for $100 million. He's one of the best players in baseball. Like, you look at what Soto's making and some of these guys, but the Braves locked him up early, as they do with a lot of their young guys, and it's worked out brilliantly for them. But they also have gotten to the position where, like, Ronald Acuna hit his potential. Like, now it's time for the Cardinals, to get these guys, for Jordan Walker, for Nolan Gorman to hit their potential. Part of the reason they haven't had any of these big extensions is most definitely because, they're waiting for Hein Bloom to take over, for him to put the money where he wants it. That's a conversation for a whole nother day, but eventually, who's going to be the first for the Cardinals to extend? Because that as soon as next offseason hits, I'd be shocked if a couple of these guys didn't get nice extensions, because some of these guys, the Lars Nootbaars, the Brendan Donovans, the miscellaneous, those type of players, are going to be getting, I'd imagine, some nice extensions. But anyway, that's a separate conversation. Let's keep on with the moves that have been going on today. And there you see the next one. You want to read that one, Matthew?
Yeah, so Katie Wu followed up. Michael Siani has also made the club. Jose Fermin, despite being told early in the week he would be on the roster, was the final cut. Michael McGreevy starts in Memphis. Obviously, a lot to get here right off the bat. We did have Rita, who came into the chat earlier with some incredulity. Did they actually tell Fermin that he made the roster and then say, no, just kidding? Yeah, apparently that's exactly what happened, because we all reported on Friday, we all being not just Sports Hub STL, but the collective we of the media in St. Louis, reported that Jose Fermin had been told that he was going to make the roster. He was going to be the backup shortstop, backup utility infielder. And yeah, apparently they changed that because they had to shoehorn Michael Siani onto this roster for some reason. Katie Wu did elaborate that the reason, my apologies for that one, is that the Cardinals will use Michael Siani as a fourth outfielder defensive replacement. They do not have a backup shortstop. Oli Marmol acknowledged Donovan can fill in when needed. We'll get to the other half of that tweet later on as we talk pitching. But right now, just a little bit of a soliloquy and a tangent, Ethan, on the Michael Siani and the Jose Fermin no backup shortstop decisions that were made today.
So I'm okay with Michael Siani making this club. I still am. If everyone's freaking out because he had a bad spring, Michael Siani, I thought, was one of the biggest winners for your club in 2024. Like, it took him a little while to get the bat going. The OPS never got there, but he finally got to the point where he was hitting 230 probably, 225. I mean, which is not good, but it's enough to be like a strong defensive center fielder with a club that has pitching that is very contact heavy. You have to have a good center fielder. And Michael Siani, I thought, did that role phenomenally last year. And nobody expected him to jump into that role at any point last year. So, people are pissed that Michael Siani is making the club in the first place because he had a bad spring. We can't be picky and choosy with springs for people and say okay, this guy has a bad spring, but we're going to be okay with it, and that guy has a bad spring, but we're not going to be okay with it. This makes sense to me because he's going to be a late inning defensive replacement when you bring in a guy like a Luken Baker to pinch hit for you in certain spots. There's a lot of lefties in this lineup, and for the Cardinals to finally have a guy like Luken Baker that can provide some power from the right side, I think that'll be really good for this Cardinals team. But Luken Baker's not going to he's just so Mike Siani's going to be in that situation. I think a lot of times to be able to replace Luken Baker, he'll end up in center somewhere in the outfield. He can play anywhere out there. He's better than Jordan Walker out there. He's better than all of your outfielders out there. So I don't see a problem with this personally. If his bat gets going, then great. I don't even think he's going to be used for his bat very much. It is interesting. I'm trying to figure out on the fly here. So what changed to where Jose Fermin, help me out here, Matthew. What changed to where Jose Fermin had a spot, and then who did he get booted out by? Was it in the last week that he got booted out by Victor Scott? Did they just decide that he was the guy? Is that what you think it was?
You hit my answer right on the head because I really just think that there's sometimes managers develop crutches, and I don't mean that in a negative way. I mean they develop moves that make them feel comfortable in certain situations. Whether it be I like to go to this lefty in this situation. I like to go to this guy when I need my double play. I like to go to this guy in this situation. I think it was complained about a lot, but Tony La Russa liked his defensive replacements late in games. And I think that Oli Marmol has that in his bloodstream where he likes his defensive replacements late in a game. And that's what we're being told Michael Siani's role is going to be. Late game defensive replacement and fourth outfielder. And so I just think this is Victor Scott, to your point earlier in the show. Victor Scott made this decision impossible for the Cardinals with him. You can't send me down. You cannot do it. You have to give me this chance. And so that I think is a huge factor. And as soon as that happened, they go, okay, so how do we get Michael Siani on this roster still? And Jose Fermin was the casualty. And I think that it was a forced hand situation, or else you don't tell Fermin that. And at the same time, I know there's some people who are very negative about the Donovan in the backup shortstop role. Fermin's 4 hours away in Memphis. Mason Wynn wants to play 162. And Donovan, I know he didn't play it at all in spring, can play shortstop. Topher Rocks brings up Siani's on the roster to come in for Walker in close games and maybe pinch run or bunt. He's somewhat valuable. as a bench guy. Your thoughts continuing on Michael Siani and kind of just maybe, I think you're right. I think it's Victor Scott II just forced everyone's hand, and that caused a domino effect.
Yeah, I think so as well. And let's keep in mind, like, Michael Siani, like, he may be listed as the fourth outfielder, but really he's the fifth outfielder because technically Brendan Donovan is ahead of him as well. So it's not like on days where one of those guys needs a day off that Michael Siani is going to be starting for you. He's not. I mean, he's going to get very little time in the starting lineup, in my opinion, because on days when Jordan Walker needs a day off in right field, Lars Nootbaar is going to shift to right, and then either Alec Burleson or Brendan Donovan's going to shift to left. On days where Victor Scott needs a day off, maybe then Michael Siani starts in center. But though that's kind of the situation where I see Lars Nootbaar shifting into center and being there on the occasion. And then in left field, when Lars Nootbaar needs a day off, Brendan Donovan's going to be in left. So the only time that I could see Michael Siani getting time in the starting lineup is if Oli only feels comfortable with him in center field. And I want to say that we already heard Oli say that, like, he's comfortable with Nootbaar in a backup center field position during the spring. I want to say that he mentioned that. So it wouldn't surprise me if Nootbaar played center field some. But that's the only way that I see Michael Siani getting playing time in the starting lineup. So for those that are like, well, what about him even as a fourth outfielder? He's not good enough to be. He's not. He's really like your fifth or sixth outfielder because you have Alec Burleson too. So he's not going to play a lot in the starting lineup. Like I think it was Topher Rock said, this is going to be a guy that's going to be late game substitution, defensive replacement. You know, maybe if you need a sack bunt put down, if you need a guy that's going to be able to pinch run for you, he's got some speed on the bags. That's 100% right. Topher Rocks gets it. Dave, take lessons from Topher Rocks. He gets what's going on here. Redbird Farm.
Yeah, what about Redbird Farmhands here? Siani making the roster makes me think the Cardinals have no faith in Newt to play center field.
Yeah, that might be the case. But, like, if it's the case, then okay, so be it. Then Michael Siani's in the lineup, once a week? It's not like Victor Scott's not going to get a boatload of playing time. I mean, that doesn't really have a huge effect on me. If they feel, I don't really care if they feel like Victor Scott can play in center field or not, because now they've made the decision. Or sorry, Victor Scott, that Lars Nootbaar can play in center field or not, because like they've already made it clear that Scott's going to be your everyday guy. Siani might play there like once a week if Nootbaar doesn't. But like, okay, then the thing that's going to be more interesting to me. We saw, and this could change in a heartbeat. Last year, Brandon Crawford got a lot more playing time than I think a lot of the fan base wanted. Like at one point, he was playing, once every 3 or 4 games. And that was when Mason Wynn was having some back issues early in the year, and they were trying to be cautious with him. But people were not happy at one point about that. Now it's going to be Mason Wynn playing every day, which I think is going to be a great thing. Do I think that Brendan Donovan's going to be at shortstop very often? No, I don't. I think that Mason Wynn's going to be playing close to every day. And then when you need Jose Fermin or Jose Barrero to come up and play short for a day, then they will. Here's the thing. It's Jose Fermin's a average at best defensive replacement. His bat is okay, but it hasn't proven to be anything special. He's had time at the major league level now, back and forth in the last 2 seasons. But we know for sure that he's not a very good defensive replacement. So it's not like Mike, the reason I bring that up is like, what's the difference between Brendan Donovan and Jose Fermin at shortstop? Like that's the reason I bring that up. Obviously, Fermin has a lot more experience there, but Fermin doesn't have a great arm. He profiles much better as a second baseman because of the weak arm. I think that I'm just as confident in Brendan Donovan to be able to play shortstop as I am Jose Fermin. So, I mean, maybe if there's an issue with, like, if Wynn ends up having some sort of issue or needs a little bit more rest, maybe then we see a Fermin or a Barrero come up and be that bench piece that can kind of mix in there a little bit. But that's kind of a worst case scenario because I think the Cardinals expect to have Mason Wynn playing shortstop close to as much as possible in 2025.
Yeah, Joseph Polaster was with you the whole way, pointing out that Fermin's a little bit of an average shortstop and that Barrero is way better. But obviously, Barrero's bat kind of holds him back a little bit. We're going to keep rolling on here on the Cards Hub 365 because we got a couple more moves to break down here. We're presented and powered by Gray Bar right here on Cards Hub 365, your distributor for electrical and datacom needs. Find them online at graybar.com. Again, incredible work by Katie Wu and everyone down there. Let's keep moving on here. The bullpen shakes out now as Helsley, Maton, Romero, Fernandez, King, Matz, Leahy, and Roycroft. And the reaction to that obviously is from Matz is because we can go up to the bottom here. The Cardinals' six-man rotation starts on 4/16 because of scheduling off days. The Cardinals plan to keep Libby in the rotation regardless. So let's break this down in kind of most important to least important factors, which is Matthew Liberatore announced in the original kind of string of announcements that Matthew Liberatore is in the starting rotation as the fifth starter. So your reaction, Ethan Hannaford, to the Liberatore news, which I think is a little bit surprising considering it seemed like the conversation was, this is your lefty in the bullpen, this is your long relief, this is your Andrew Miller, this is your switchblade, however you want to use him, but he's in your bullpen, and that's a good long-term spot for Libby. And then 10:30 today, the entire narrative gets blown up. Your thoughts?
Interesting. Not what I was expecting, that is for sure. I think that when we look at what Matthew Liberatore was in 2024, he finally figured it out for the first time. And the biggest issue with Matthew Liberatore was he's a guy that first time through a lineup is really good because his stuff plays really well against him. But when he feels like he has to hold some of that best stuff back, that's where some of the issues start to come in. And so he gets moved to the bullpen, and now he's working for an inning, 2 innings, and the stuff there is no worry about having to hold that best stuff back. That's why we saw such good numbers from him out of the bullpen last year as that long reliever that could throw you a couple of innings. So am I a little bit surprised? Yes, but also like when you look at his spring training numbers, like they've been really solid. Now he's thrown multi innings, but that's not in most outings, but that's not getting through a lineup 2 or 3 times until yesterday, where he ends up throwing 4 innings, 2 hits, 1 earned run, couple of walks, couple of strikeouts. But he threw 71 pitches. So it's not like the writing wasn't on the wall a little bit that they were trying to do something with Matthew Liberatore. They were definitely ramping him up to start games. So I'm excited for Matthew Liberatore and the opportunity that the Cardinals are giving him. It is refreshing to see the Cardinals giving a young guy, finding an alley for a younger guy to have the chance to start some games. Did I expect it? No. Am I hopeful that it works out for him? Yes. Am I hoping that it how things worked last year for the success he had in the bullpen transfers to this year in the starting rotation? Absolutely. I'm hoping for that. We talked about this earlier during I think spring training, why, really and mostly in part trying to find a spot for Michael McGreevy. And it was like, well, why don't you move Matz to the bullpen? He's been arguably better in the bullpen the last couple of seasons after recovery from injury. It preserves him a little bit. He's got this. I mean, his fastball still can get up there a little bit when he's in the bullpen. Like that's something that makes sense. But the whole thing was, well, they already have Matthew Liberatore back there, so why would you don't need two Matthew Liberatores, or you don't need 2 Steven Matzes, because they're basically replicas of each other in that sense. But now him being in the starting rotation, I'm excited for the opportunity. I'm excited to see what he can do. And let's just hope that this time around in the starting rotation, it's different than it was prior. Steven Matz is still eventually going to be a part of this starting rotation. Something that I will say, I think is genius on the Cardinal standpoint. We talk about, Steven Matz and all the issues he has dealt with these last couple of years. All of them have come early in the season. Hopefully the 6-man rotation, which in my mind for the Cardinals has never they've kind of mentioned it the last couple of years, but it's never really made sense. This year, I think that like what they're doing makes sense. Like it's preservation for Steven Matz to see if you can keep him healthy. Because when the Cardinals have been a better ball club when Steven Matz is healthy. So I like the idea. I like the thought. I just hope that it executes. If it doesn't, then Matthew Liberatore gets put back in the bullpen, and it is what it is. It's not like it's a huge thing to where like, you're donezo, you're screwed, you're going back to AAA if things don't work out. He'll go back to what worked best for him last year.
People are still joining us here on Cards Hub 365 on the Sports Hub STL YouTube. Like and subscribe. Join into the comments if you have some thoughts on any of these moves. We've already broken down the Victor Scott II, Jose Fermin, and Michael Siani aspect. We're moving on to the pitching here, but if you have some comments about the other moves, jump into the comments. We'll get to those as we keep on rolling here. Let's hit a couple here as we're talking about all these pitching changes. Libby is going to cook, and we are going to be like, wow, this was the greatest decision ever. Heim will chime in and say, yep, so. That was my call. It's funny because this is hilarious to me because we also have this. They are hell-bent on Liberatore being a starter. 1, to make Mozeliak look good. 2, because Chaim Bloom likes Liberatore. We'll see how Lib handles MLB starts versus spring. And you saw me, I threw up this tweet. John Denton playing a little bit of party pooper on Twitter right after the news broke when he threw out these stats about Matthew Liberatore, saying foes will load up with right-handed hitters. Righties have hit 292 with an 878 OPS in Major League Baseball versus Liberatore, and his ERA as a reliever is 389, 2 full points worse. It's 586 as a starter in his career. So a little bit of a shock to the system with the numbers by John Denton, but I think it's hard not to have some positivity when you see what Libby's able to do. Ray chimes in, Libby's potential future with the Cardinals, Matz does not. Great move to give him a shot as a starter again. I obviously agree with that one. I love that they're giving Liberatore a shot. Am I a little bit worried that they're doing it with a guy who it seemed like they had locked in that long reliever role because it worked better for him? I am a little bit worried about that aspect of things, and that's why I think we should move on to the next side, which is I don't think there's anybody who's shocked by the Matz thing. Like you said, early on in the season, let him get going from the bullpen. We'll table what happens in April 16th to a moment, because I wanted to talk about the very, very top side of this, of the Daniel Guerrero tweet. And we have a lot of reaction here in the chats, which is Michael McGreevy is opening the year in AAA. I think there's a lot of people, when they saw the 6-man rotation thing that we're going to talk about here in a little bit, they were disappointed that Steven Matz was going to move from the bullpen to the rotation instead of maybe Michael McGreevy getting called up or some kind of machinations to get him in there. A lot of anger in the chat overall about Michael McGreevy. Let me jump here to Craig Lewis. Excuse me, that's the wrong one. My apologies. That's Jeff P. As a longtime Cardinals fan and longtime attendee of many games, I want to apologize to Mikey McGee, I like that, for the ignorance of not letting him start the rotation in day one. Your thoughts on the Michael McGreevy starting in AAA, and we'll roll into some of the 6-man rotation stuff that will happen in April.
My thoughts on this is kudos to Michael McGreevy for the hell of a spring that he had. He was the best pitcher by far in spring for St. Louis. It is a long season, and AAA starts for Michael McGreevy in 2025 to start off the year is not going to hurt him. There is going to be a point where he is going to he's going to pitch at the major league level this year. He's going to get his opportunities. The Cardinals have a lot of veterans there. Something that will be interesting is who's going to fill that long relief role once we get to April 16th in the bullpen. I guess they'll just have I guess no. The correction. No, I correct myself because then they'll have a 6-man rotation. So my apologies for that. Actively processing this with me. So have grace with me, chat. He's going to get starts at some point. The season, like when was the last time that the Cardinals went through a season where they didn't have any injuries in their starting rotation? Like when was the last time? Like
it doesn't exist.
He's going to get starts. He's going to get opportunities. So just because in the same way with like talking about Nolan Gorman and Alec Burleson's at bats, how things look on day one or not how they're going to look on day 30, or not how they're going to look on day 60. People's, sharing their concerns for Matthew Liberatore as a starter. Let's not forget that Matthew Liberatore still wants to be a starter.
Yes.
So like this is just as much him like advocating for himself in this position as it is anything else. It's not like Matthew Liberatore. They're just saying, okay, this is what you're going to do, and he's like, I don't want to do that. That's not what's happening here. So Matthew Liberatore has always been very public and very not shy about saying he wants to be a starter. So I think that this was I think he had just as much a say in this as well. I think it's great how I forget who said the comment. I think it was Ray said like, this is great because it allows for the Cardinals to find a way to at least filter in some youth into a rotation that I didn't think there was going to be really any in besides Andre Palante. And he's kind of not even really like a youth piece anymore.
Yeah, that's true.
He's been around for quite a few years. So I really like it. Michael McGreevy is going to get his opportunities. Starting the year in AAA is not going to hurt him. And Topher Rock's bringing up a great point here. They have to trade Matz and Fetty at some point. There's a lot of guys in the system that are going to be impactful pieces. And eventually we'll get to that point when, there's no doubt in my mind, Eric Fetty is going to be one of the most the most demanded pieces at the trade deadline. And you might be able to get something good in return for him. Depending on what Steven Matz does, maybe him as well. He still has, it's still not necessarily a team-friendly contract, 11 years for what he's put up. But if he's really solid this year, and if he can stay healthy, then who knows what can happen. So a lot of time, just because he's not starting on day one does not mean that he's not going to be starting here and not going to get some time at the major league level this year.
Jakal comes in and says, I don't care if Michaelis or Matz is under contract. Having McGreevy start in AAA is stupid. I don't like it either, but it makes a lot of sense in all the things, especially because think about this. If Matz plays well, that $11 million is very tradable at the deadline. It's prorated, $6 million at that point. Actually, at that point, because of how late in the season, it's more like $5 million of the 11 probably. So that's a drop in the bucket if a team just needs an arm, especially in long relief like Steven Matz can do. And so again, you're not going to get a lot, but being able to chip off any other prospect from another team as you're building through. Jesse Rogers joined the Randy Carricker show last week, and he talked about how you don't want to be working on a pool of 10 prospects. You need a pool of 100 prospects so that when guys filter through, you have talent left and you have 6 or 7 guys. And so being able to trade a Matz or a Michaelis when they have any value left and chip off a prospect from some team that needs it, that is a useful thing going forward for the Cardinals. And so I think there is both a long play and a short play way to look at this. And that's how you have to think the Cardinals are looking at it as well.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. And I'll say this too. I think that I understand holding on to Eric Fetty. That contract is so friendly, and
that too. Yeah, God,
teams are willing to offer more at the deadline than they are. There's so much more desperation. Like people wondering why Ryan Helsley wasn't traded during the offseason. Like, you look at what some of the top end relief pieces got in return last year at the trade deadline. I imagine that John Mozeliak was saying, well, our guy is better than all the ones that were traded in those deals. So we're going to hold on to him unless they plan on extending him, which would kind of surprise me. But pieces, just the value for pieces at the trade deadline just goes up, in my opinion. I don't know if there's teams with Steven Matz's health track the last couple of years that were willing to give up anything for him. So I think the Cardinals probably were trying to trade Steven Matz. Eric Fetty, I think it makes more sense to hold on to him. So, but I think that it wouldn't be surprising if those were coming. Well, let's see. What's Sniper Gaming saying here? Look at it this way. The Cardinals will have 3 rotation spots opening up this offseason. Get what you can out of the guys you currently have in these spots and trade them. Perfect situation for McGreevy. Yeah, that's a great point to bring up. Next year, there are going to be, these guys have expiring contracts. They are going to be wrapping up their time in St. Louis likely. So there is going to be opportunities in the near future, and hopefully the latter half of the year, we see more of those guys kind of getting what I know it's on the offensive side, but what Mason Wynn got in 2023, kind of bridging into 2024, getting a little bit of time, getting a little bit of a taste of the majors in the latter half of the year to help you get ready for the next season.
And one thing I do want to say is a lot of people were talking about the start of the year about how things aren't going to be the same and all that stuff like that. So let me throw out an example of what happens, especially since we had John Denton talking about the struggles that Matthew Liberatore has had as a starter. So, and as we do this, I'm going to throw up, where is it? There's the bullpen right now as it stands. Let's fast forward through the Cardinals schedule. So Twins, Angels, Sox, Pirates, Phillies, Astros. Bam. Those are the series between now and April 16th. And then you actually finish off against the Astros on the 16th. So those are the series right out of the gate. Let's say Matthew Liberatore struggles a little bit in his starts across those series. Now it's April 16th. Now the Cardinals are at a 6-man rotation. Who's been pitching in a 6-man rotation since the start of the season? The people down in Memphis. So their arms are already in that run of things. So you don't got to worry about that. Matthew Liberatore struggling as a starter. So April 16th hits. You take Leahy or King or Fernandez, DFA them or send them down. I'm not 100% sure about their options right now off the top of my head. You move one of those guys. You bring up McGreevy. Liberatore slides into the bullpen after struggling as a starter, and now Michael McGreevy is your 6th starter. His arm's fine with it because that's what he's used to in the minors. Now Liberatore's back in a role that we all believe in him even more as a reliever, and now you also have a guy like Liberatore who's in that swing role of Palante, McGreevy, Matz, Michaelis, anybody who has that short start in that 6-man rotation. Now you have a built-in long guy to piggyback on any of those 6 starts. And probably across those 6 starts, he can probably do 2. You can probably piggyback twice across those 6, assuming it's spread out across like the first and the 5th start or the 2nd and the 6th, what have you. That is a situation I could very well see happening in that switch at April 16th if Liberatore struggles right out of the gate. Your thoughts on that potential?
I don't know if I agree with necessarily the bullpen pieces you named for DFA options, but I think in large part it could depend on who is struggling. If someone is struggling significantly too, if they're all looking really sharp, I'd be really surprised if the Cardinals were found a reason to DFA one of them. Like you said, I don't know like what all the option numbers are and everything, but like. A lot of it depends on seasonal performance. I think they're really high on Roycroft. Leahy was pretty solid last year. Fernandez was phenomenal. John King was also phenomenal. So the bullpen is definitely something they take great pride in, and was honestly was the sole reason that they won 83 games last year. So I'm not. I like the logic of it. I'm just not sure as far as executing it, what the X's and O's would look like. But that'll definitely be something interesting to keep an eye on once we get to that point. If there is an issue with Matthew Liberatore, where do things go from there?
I mean, like I said, my bigger thing is just all the people angry about McGreevy is there is a pretty clear way to see McGreevy being in the starting rotation, considering the rotation is going to go to 6 people after the first month of the season. And we've been talking a lot about how things have been different. Things are going to be different this season, and how things could change after those first 6-7 weeks. If Victor Scott struggles, if Nolan Gorman struggles, if some of the pitchers struggle, we could see a big change in a lot of ways. And hell, I know this doesn't affect the roster, but I mean, you can see a lot of this Cardinal team different in a lot of ways. What if Ivan Herrera struggles at the plate, and all of a sudden, that completely changes, how much you want to play him relative if he's not hitting the ball. And so there's a lot of things I think could change in those first 6-7 weeks. Damian Fowler comes in. This will be our last big topic of the program. How long is this 6-man rotation supposed to last? Your thoughts overall, Ethan, about the confirmation that they are going to go to a 6-man rotation, but it will be after all of those early days off?
Good question. As far as like how long it'll be, I'm looking at the schedule here. Let's see. In
April they don't have a day off after that day. May they're off.
April they have the 24th off.
24th. Okay, yeah, you got so then May
And
they
then in
got-
May they have every Thursday except for May 1st off. So they have 4 days off in May.
Yep.
In June, boy, June is a long month. They only have 2 days off in June.
It's usually how it goes. That makes sense.
Here's the thing: the Cardinals have not announced how long that this 6-man rotation will go. I imagine that it's hard to say. It's hard to know. I think a lot of it's going to be based off of how well your pitching is doing. If there's someone that's struggling, I think that part of it is going to be if like, for example, if Sonny Gray is not Sonny Gray of last year, you don't have as much reason to have to throw him once every 5 days, at least to start off the year. It's really hard to have an answer to how long it's supposed to last. Because
I guess why do you think they're doing it? Because let's try to get to the reasoning for this, and then maybe we can figure out the time frame. Why do you think this is the decision? We know why it's not happening until April 16th, because so many days off in just 5 series it wouldn't work with everyone's schedule and all that stuff. But why do you think the Cardinals believe going to a 6-man rotation is better for either winning or developing their young pitchers? Why do you think they're making this move?
2 reasons. One, it allows for you to get a young guy that you think that you see potential in to be an impactful piece in the starting rotation eventually. Time to work on that while still having all of these, of these veterans locked up. And 2, for the preservation of Steven Matz. Making sure that Steven Matz has had both of his early season injuries, or both of his injuries early in the season. So I think those are the 2 main reasons in my eyes. Steven Matz has proven to be really solid when he has been healthy, but he hasn't been able to stay healthy. If Steven Matz stays healthy, then Cardinals fans, let's think about this. Then there's a better chance that he might get traded at the deadline. But if he doesn't, then he's still going to be a piece that's kind of going to be in this, like, what do we do with him? Where are we at? We know we're not going to cut him because the Cardinals have never been one to cut struggling veteran players. Like, that's just not what they do. They don't waste that money. So that doesn't really give me much of a better idea in my personal opinion. I mean, I would say, like, right now these guys aren't ramped up to 90, 100 pitches yet. So that makes sense at the beginning of the, but at the beginning of the year, there's so many off days that it basically is a 6-man rotation because of the off days included. They're still going to get like that extra day off, all of these starters. That's not going to happen once you get into that little stretch there. Yeah. I just think they're trying to be a little bit precautious with how they handle their starting pitching.
So we had Joseph Polaster and Jeff P. both brought up the Sonny Gray factor. Also, if Sonny struggles, continue through 3 starts, they may IL him and make a pivot. Then you and Brendan did about 40 minutes yesterday, and I think Sonny Gray was a overwhelming majority of those 40 minutes. I caught about 30 minutes of that podcast. So you just got talking a lot of Sonny, a lot of the struggles. Do you think that this 6-man decision, which was talked about on Monday, then we didn't hear anything about it for 2 days, and then Sonny Gray struggles again, and then we get it confirmed, do you think that this 6-man rotation is connected to the struggles of Sonny Gray in the spring?
It could be. There's a chance it could be. I wouldn't say it's like this is 100% the reason as to why the Cardinals are doing this, but potentially. It has not been a pretty spring for Sonny Gray. We know that. It has not been good. We also know that Sonny Gray has had bad springs in previous seasons also. Like, I think that Sonny Gray, I said this yesterday as well, like, my biggest concern about Sonny Gray between this previous start that he just had and the one he had before was his post-game reaction to it. And last two starts ago, it was like, I've had bad spring trainings. Like, okay, like, it is what it is. Like, I'm not worried about it. But then last week, it was much more addressing the drop in velocity.
Mm-hmm.
It was a lot more like, I don't quite have that stuff right now, but I'll figure out how to get it. Here's the thing. Sonny Gray has never been one to, like, not be very candid with the media. Like, you ask him a question, he'll give you a 5.5-minute answer. Like,
sometimes a little too candid there, Sonny. Stop putting yourself on the chopping block, my guy.
That dude can talk. He can talk. So I say that to say, like, like I don't think that Sonny's answer yesterday necessarily like made me think, ooh, there might be an injury here. Like I think it's a guy that's getting up there in age and saying, yeah, right now I don't have it. Right now I don't have that velo. Do I wish I had it? Yeah. But like I'm gonna work and I'm gonna adjust in other ways to figure out how to get guys out. That's basically the gist of what he said. From what his comments yesterday, I thought it was a little bit concerning about the velo drop. I don't know necessarily. I mean, I can't guarantee 100%, but I didn't read or hear that and say, oh, this guy's definitely like has an injury or something going on.
Fair enough there, Jeff P. With a funny anecdote, potentially a hypothetical anecdote. Sonny slides by Chaim's office and is like, look, I need this. Doesn't have, I'm going to start sweating through 2 jerseys an inning until it happens, and you don't want that dry cleaning bill. They fixed the jerseys, guys. They're not going to be as sweaty this year. They fixed the jerseys. Don't worry.
They look so much better.
They do look better. The numbers look a lot better too. My God.
I will say, I still miss the red spring training jerseys. I still do miss them. But, what jersey did we – I guess the City Connect is what we got in exchange. So we still have a red jersey. They're fine. Whatever, I guess.
Hey, I'm up for anything that has the Angry Redbird. You got a good hat going today, Ethan. I like that.
I appreciate it.
The Angry Redbird is an underused logo. I'm glad we've kind of brought that back, and it's been a lot of fun. And it's been a lot of fun breaking down all the Cardinals news. Again, Brooke kind of broke down. She kind of did our show plan right there on Twitter for us. This is everything we've talked about today. Victor Scott will be the opening day center fielder. Michael Siani is still on the roster. That means that Jose Fermin is not on the roster, which means Brendan Donovan is your backup shortstop right now in emergency cases. Matthew Liberatore will be the 5th starter. Steven Matz going to start the season in the bullpen, and then he will join the rotation as the 6th starter in a 6-man rotation on April 16th. Michael McGreevy will not be in that rotation as of now as he starts the season in Memphis. A lot of news we just broke down right here on Cards Hub 365. That's what we do every single day here on Sports Hub STL. Sometimes it's me and Ethan. Sometimes it's Joe Roderick and Mike Claiborne. And, well, that's just life. Sometimes you just don't. Sometimes you got to roll with the B squad. And so, Ethan, thank you so much for joining it. We got to break down some awesome talk today. Thank you to everybody who joined us in the chat throughout this entire show here. Again, if you haven't already, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the bell button. We're here for Cards Hub 365 every single day. We're also here. If a St. Louis team is playing, we're talking about the game after the fact on Sports Hub STL. City, Blues, Cardinals. We're coming to you with post games after all of those games. So stay tuned to Sports Hub STL. Ethan, thank you so much for joining me today, sir.
Pleasure as always, my friend.
And enjoy the rest of your day, St. Louis. Have a good one.